part of the theatrical experience, is you go not just to see the movie in an immersive setting, you also go to experience the film with other people. And, that can be a great communal experience when everybody's into the movie and, you're all sharing the emotional reactions of it. Sometimes, it doesn't go so well, and that kind of becomes part of the experience too. Like sometimes it's just weird things that happen. Sometimes it's when, people aren't into the movie. I get bothered when people, are being distracting, but sometimes, it turns into a story afterwards, and I can tell it's like, oh, I remember I went and saw this movie, and like, this guy wouldn't shut up, or this, this other person wouldn't get off their phone, or this other person did something bizarre. I lived in Seattle for a year, and there was this theater called the Seattle Cinerama, which I think is still the best theater I've ever been to in my life. They routinely played like 70 millimeter films. They had an enormous screen, biggest screen I've ever seen in my life. And they were actually one of the few theaters in the country that was still set up to play Cinerama, 3-strip Cinerama, where you had 3 35 millimeter cameras all going at once, and the screen like fully wrapped around the audience.
I don't think it's currently open. I think it's still there, but I don't know that it's still operating currently. I think after the pandemic, it closed just temporarily. Hopefully they're planning a comeback soon, because it really is. I
really hope so.
It's an incredible place to see movies. Like people were flying in to come to this Cinerama festival, like from all over the world. It's extremely rare to see original prints of some of these movies.
Yeah, we saw a couple of Cinerama movies. We saw This Is Cinerama there in Cinerama. We saw How the West Was Won, which was like, I mean, that movie, like if you watch it on DVD or Blu-ray, it's good. It's not great. You see it in Cinerama, it's like stunning. I remember seeing Playtime in 70 millimeter, Jacques Tati's Playtime, which is one of the only like epic avant-garde comedies that you can see in 70 millimeter. It's brilliant. I saw Baraka in 70 millimeter, another avant-garde like non-verbal piece by Ron Fricke, who was the cinematographer for Koyaanis Katsi. I remember seeing Tron in 70 millimeter. I remember seeing Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan in 70 millimeter, which was great because I saw it with a packed house of Trekkies. And like, there is no movie that is more fun to watch than Wrath of Khan when you're in a full theater with people who adore Wrath of Khan. Like, there were cheers, when Shatner got to his like big like Khan, like everybody just started screaming and applauding. Like, it was so much fun. I remember seeing The Matrix in 35 millimeter, and the screen was so big in the Cinerama. And the speakers behind the screen were so huge. I remember when it got to the scene where the helicopter crashes into the building, that sound effect moved so much air in the theater that it actually blew my hair back while I was sitting there. You and I saw A Clockwork Orange there on 35 millimeter. And this is a great example of something going wrong and kind of turning into a memorable experience. One of the final reels of that movie, there was a malfunction. The projector didn't work. It's towards the very end when Malcolm McDowell wakes up in a room, and it's after he's had his reprogramming, and the Beethoven symphony is playing, and he's just in agony. Right before it cut to that scene, there was a reel change, and the projector malfunctioned, and the screen went blank. And I remember you and I sitting there like, uh-oh, what just happened? And somebody in the audience brought up the song on their phone and just turned it up to full volume and just held up their phone with the I think it's the Ninth Symphony, and just blasted that while we waited for the next reel to come on. It was just one of those great moments, where something went wrong, but it kind of turned into this really memorable experience that kind of goes with the film for us. And we even saw a lot of the classics on 70. Like, we saw Sound of Music, we saw West Side Story, we saw Lawrence of Arabia, all on 70. 2001: A Space Odyssey, like, we got really lucky, we got to see all those on 70 millimeter in a theater, theater that big and that great.
I live in Portland. I live very, very close to the Hollywood Theater here in Portland, which for my money easily is the best theater in Oregon. Quentin Tarantino has even said, he might have been pandering to the specific audience, but when he showed The Hateful Eight and his 70 millimeter roadshow version after the film, he got up on the stage and said, like, I've never seen The Hateful Eight look better than like on this screen. This is by far the best presentation of this film that I've seen. The one story I wanted to tell while we wrap up here was just related to National Cinema Day from last year. I mentioned at the front of the show seeing Top Gun Maverick, which was kind of the big summer movie last year. This was memorable for kind of the opposite reasons of things kind of really going wrong.
I still remember seeing certain movies back in our hometown at like the mall theater where we always used to go to see stuff. Like, I can still name the movies where people like talked, and like interrupted the movie. Like, I remember seeing Slumdog Millionaire, and the group of guys next to me wouldn't shut up the whole time. And I still remember going to see Cloverfield, and those guys like not realizing it was like a found footage movie. It's just like, why is the camera all shaky?
I remember somebody trying to make a joke during the Simpsons movie, and like it just like,
of course, there's already jokes in the movie.
That's what I thought. I was like, that's like a comedy sin of trying to riff on a comedy. Like, it's this one experience was kind of more just caught in a hurricane and just not even knowing like what is going on right now. We went to go see Top Gun, and it had been playing for quite a long time. When we went and see it, it was still playing in the biggest screen at the Cinemark, and every single seat was filled. We sat in the middle of a row. Then, as people were filing in, a family of probably like 15 or 16 people came in as one big group and sat in our row. And because there weren't like 15 seats all sitting together, it was like 10 of their family, us, and then like 6 more of their family. And we knew they were all one group because they kept talking to each other and just like looking past us and yelling at each other.
Oh
like,
my God.
The person who was sitting next to Felix was wearing sandals. He said that halfway through the movie, he slipped off his sandals and like brought his feet up like to his hands and was like picking at his toes.
Oh God.
About 15 minutes into the movie, there's some kind of projector malfunction, and it basically looks like the movie is in 3. Sorry. It looks like the movie is in 3D, like the image just splits.
Oh, okay, like it's misaligned.
Yeah. So there's 2 Tom Cruises in every shot. They didn't stop the movie, but I think the screen went to black for a second and then came back up as a corrected image. After that subsides, in this line, within this family, there's an older man to my right. We keep hearing like a phone ping, like the very recognizable ping, like notification sound happening on our right. We would look over and see the guy, and he'd pull out his phone and look at his phone at full brightness, so just like light up the theater. And then he'd like put it back and like continue watching the movie. And then 10 minutes later, ping, he'd pull out his phone, full brightness, look at it, and put the phone back in his pocket. He was an older guy, so I was like, maybe he just doesn't know how to silence his phone. I was hoping that someone in his family would just say like, Grandpa, turn off your phone. Ultimately, probably it's a bad thing that nobody did because it escalated. It gets towards... You haven't seen the movie, have you?
No.
Okay. Well, you don't care if I spoil something, right?
I'm okay with it.
So minor spoiler for Top Gun 2 if you haven't seen it. A somewhat major character dies.
Not Goose.
You know Miles Teller plays Goose's son, right? In that movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Pretty cool. But anyway, a somewhat major character dies. And it's an emotional scene where we're at the funeral and Tom Cruise is giving a eulogy, like he was a great pilot. And as he's giving the eulogy, we hear ping, like really loudly. And then I just hear someone screaming, just turn off your phone, turn off your phone. And I look to my right, and the woman sitting behind the guy, the older guy, is slapping the top of his head. And hitting this guy, and she's leaning over him trying to grab his phone, and he's like obviously angling himself away, covering his head, and then the whole family like gets up and is like pushing this woman back, like all during this funeral scene as Tom Cruise is crying like like he was a great pilot, and it's like screaming, turn off the phone, and
have some respect for the fallen here.
it subsides after like a minute of them like pushing and yelling, and the last word like was the guy saying like, someone is sending me text, there's nothing I can do about it. So okay, like that to me made it very clear of like the guy's not intentionally using his phone, he just doesn't know how to silence his phone. I think somebody in his family was able to silence his phone because it didn't ping anymore. And I thought that everything was okay. I kind of forgot about what was happening in the theater because this finale was so great. Everyone who's seen it knows what I'm talking about. And as soon as the credits roll, as soon as the movie resolves, like we're the Top Guns, credits, they start up again and start screaming at each other. And the part of the family to our right that's like was just kind of leaning over and yelling is now like running over, and this is a full-on like fight now of like these 15 people and these like 4 or 5 people in this group like pushing each other and hitting each other and over the seats, and they're falling over the seats.
Oh my god! Like a brawl, basically.
Pretty much a brawl, and yeah, just like a full-on brawl in the aisles. We're still waiting to leave. Like we're just like in our seats, just like watching all this happen.
So they were just sitting there the whole time. It's like as soon as this thing's over.
That's what I thought was incredible about it. Is I thought that maybe the situation worked itself out. I mean, obviously the woman should not have assaulted the guy. Literally, as soon as the credits rolled, it was like, "Oh, good movie." Then now it's over. No, fuck you! Like
they were just biding their time.
Yeah, it's the strangest thing. I'll tell one more quick story because it made me think of another time of witnessing an assault in a movie. It was when I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which kind of makes sense that it was a Tarantino movie that this happens. So it was during the premiere night of that movie. I didn't hear anybody talking at all during the movie. I thought it was a great experience all around. And as the credits roll, I hear somebody in front of me say, "Wow, that was a great movie." And then somebody to the right of him looked at him, said, "It would have been a lot better if you'd shut your fucking mouth during the whole thing." And then the guy, they just like look at each other and they just start punching each other and like immediately start fighting each other. I'm just thankful in all 3 of those situations nobody had a weapon or something like it. Things escalate in such a quick, unpredictable way. Like it's scary. Like we could laugh about those things now, but I mean, like, God, it could just as easily been like a horrible thing. If there's a moral to the story, that's kind of more what I think about. If I'm in a movie, I used to be the type of like, anybody that's talking, like they're garbage people or whatever, but I try to adopt a different attitude now. If I'm forced to sort of ask somebody to be quiet, just try to be as respectful and polite as possible, because most of the time they're not trying to intentionally be disruptive. It's just kind of a misunderstanding. So
yeah, just try to get along, man. Like going to a theater is a social experience too. Just remember, you're there to get along with people too.
Movies are a shared joy, like it's upsetting when it's same thing going to a concert. It's upsetting when fights start